The last thing Eliza Hartwell did inside that sod house was mend a lantern, not pack a trunk, not stand in the doorway long enough to remember herself into staying, not watch the low December sky flatten over the white river breaks until it looked like the whole world had been pressed under cold glass. She sat at the kitchen table before sunrise with Thomas's old storm lantern in her lap, working a bent hinge pin back through the brass with the tip of a sewing needle and the pressure of her thumb. That lantern had crossed 3 winters with him. It had hung from the wagon bow when they first came into the breaks. It had swung from a nail above his workbench through 2 calving seasons, 1 grasshopper year, and the long fever week that took him before the first killing frost. Eliza had left the soot in the chimney glass because washing it clean felt like an insult. Now she closed the lantern, tested the hinge twice, wrapped it in a scrap of wool, and set it in her flour sack beside 2 shirts, a tin cup, a packet of dried apples, and $7.60. Everything that was hers made almost no sound when it moved. From the room beyond the hanging quilt she heard Maribel Pruitt step across the floor, slow, measured, sure of herself before the day had properly begun. Maribel never slammed a door. She never had to. She did her damage with neat handwriting, clean aprons, and the kind of quiet that made other people feel rude for bleeding on the floor. Eliza stood, tied the flour sack closed, lifted it over her shoulder, and walked out. She did not look back. Years later, when people in Dawes County told the story, they liked that part. They said Eliza walked out without looking back because she had iron in her, because grief had burned the weak parts out of her, because a woman who could build what she built was never the sort of woman who needed to turn around. That was not the truth. The truth was smaller and harder. Eliza did not look back because her brother Harlan was in the east window. She had heard him get out of bed. He had not come into the kitchen. He had not stopped Maribel. He had not spoken when the paper was placed on the table 3 evenings before. But he had gotten up before dawn to watch his sister leave the house she and Thomas had cut from the ground with their own hands. If Eliza turned and saw him there behind the glass, holding himself still while she carried the last of her life into a December wind, something inside her would give way. And she had no use for broken things that morning, not unless they could be repaired. So she walked down from the sod house, across the brittle grass, with the lantern against her side and the cold trying to get under the cuffs of her sleeves. Behind her, smoke rose from the chimney that Thomas had taught Harlan to lay. Ahead of her, 8 miles of open country waited with no promise in it at all. 3 nights earlier, the paper had lain in the middle of the kitchen table as if it belonged there more than she did. Harlan had not brought it out. Maribel had. She had unfolded it carefully, smoothed it with both palms, and explained that the final proof on the quarter section had never been completed in Thomas's name. The filing fees had been short. The loan note had been signed by Harlan Pruitt as guarantor. Under the terms Thomas had accepted the spring before he died, the improvements in house reverted to the guarantor if the debt was called before final proof. Maribel said reverted as if she were reading from scripture. Eliza looked at Harlan. He looked at the lamp. The note was for $42, and the cost of 2 men's silence had taken the house. Maribel said her sister's family was coming from Kearney by spring. They would need a place. The arrangement would be simpler if Eliza made other accommodations before the hard weather settled in. Other accommodations, as if winter were a boarding house and grief were a bundle that could be checked at the door. Eliza asked Harlan one question. Did Thomas know what that paper could do? Harlan's jaw moved once. Then he nodded. How long have you known? He did not answer. The stove ticked. Maribel folded her hands, and the whole room gave Eliza the answer. Harlan had known since October. 2 months. 2 months of Eliza cutting hay, hauling water, banking the walls, patching the roof, and waking in Thomas's bed with one hand reaching toward a man who was not there. 2 months of Harlan letting her repair a house he already knew she would lose. So Eliza went into the back room and packed. She did not shout. Shouting was for people who still believed sound could change what had already happened. Now the sun was climbing without warmth, and the breaks opened around her in long gray folds. Most women in her position would have gone east toward Chadron. There were church basements there. There were boarding rooms. There were people who would press soup into her hands and then study the shape of her failure over the rim of a cup. Eliza had been poor before. She knew the difference between help and possession. Help leaves your hands free. Possession counts your bites. She had $7.60, Thomas's lantern, one spare dress, and the remembered location of a place no one in the county thought useful. A cut in the south face of the chalk-bluff. 6 weeks earlier, while hauling water after a dry spell, she had followed a seep farther than she meant to. A sleet squall came over the breaks fast, turning the air white and hard. She had ducked into a narrow hollow at the base of the bluff and stood there with her back to the chalk while ice struck the grass outside. Without thinking, she had set her palm on the wall. The stone was not warm, not like a stove, not like a living animal. But it held something the air had already lost, a slow, buried steadiness. Thomas had once told her that ground heat did not arrive quickly and did not leave quickly. Earth was not generous, he said. It was stubborn. And stubborn was useful if you understood it. She had remembered the hollow. She had told no one. Now, she walked toward it. By noon, the wind had teeth. By mid-afternoon, the sky had lowered until the horizon looked close enough to touch. The white river lay unseen below the breaks, but she could smell the damp mineral cold of it whenever the gusts turned. A red-tailed hawk moved above the rimrock, barely shifting its wings. Eliza stopped and watched. Her mother used to say hawks did not argue with weather. They waited for what weather made possible. Eliza had never thought of waiting as work. She did now. She reached the bluff near dark. The hollow was farther west than she remembered, hidden behind a shoulder of chalk and cedar scrub. From the outside it was nothing, a shadow, a wound in pale stone, a place a cow might avoid and a surveyor would dismiss. The opening was 5 feet across and low enough that she had to bend her head at first. Inside, the floor sloped gently toward the entrance. That mattered. Water would run out, not in. The back chamber widened to nearly 14 feet, and the ceiling rose enough for her to stand upright with room above her hair. She set down the flour sack. The wind dropped away. Not stopped. Dropped away. Outside, winter was already moving hard across the grass. Inside, the air was still enough to hear her own breath come back to her. She lit Thomas's lantern. Amber light moved over chalk walls, veined with old clay and dark roots. The chamber was empty except for sand, small stones, and the smell of dry earth. It looked like nothing anyone would choose. Eliza pressed her palm to the back wall, cool at first, then steady. The bluff had taken sun all day on its south face. The earth behind it had stored what the air wasted. It would not save her by itself. Nothing did, but it was a beginning. She sat with her back against the wall, wrapped both arms around the flour sack, and listened to the wind miss her. That was the first gift the hollow gave. It could be missed. The next morning she began by learning the place. She measured the chamber with her steps. She scraped loose sand toward the entrance. She studied the ceiling with the lantern held high and found no deep cracks. She pressed her ear to the wall and heard no water moving behind it. She marked the place where the wind curled in, then sat 10 minutes without moving to feel where the cold traveled. By afternoon she had a list in her head, a door, a second door behind the first, a raised sleeping shelf, a fire pit that would not smoke her out, storage above the damp line, and every crack packed until the air forgot how to move. On the second day she found the old line camp. It sat 2 miles south along a wagon scar, that had once carried beef toward the railhead. The roof was mostly gone. The walls leaned, but the boards under the weathered gray skin were sound, and the door had hinges thick enough to be worth stealing. Eliza had no saw. She had no hammer. She had Thomas's lantern, a butcher knife, and the kind of anger that works better when it is given a job. She pried loose 4 boards the first day by working the knife under nail heads, rocking each board back and forth until the wood screamed and gave. She carried them up the slope one at a time because 4 at once was foolish, and foolish people did not last long in December. Her hands split at the knuckles, her shoulder bruised under the load. By dark, she had 4 boards leaning inside the hollow. 4 boards did not look like shelter, but they looked like more than she had owned that morning. On the 3rd day, she found the seep again. It came from under a shelf of grass half a mile below the hollow, thin as thread but moving. Because it rose from below the frost line, it would run when shallow creeks sealed over. She knelt beside it and drank from her tin cup, then filled it again and sat there in the hard light with the first real satisfaction she had felt since Thomas died. Water close enough to carry, earth thick enough to hold heat, scrap wood within walking distance. Not abundance, but terms she could negotiate with. By the end of the first week, she had built the first wall. It was ugly. Eliza admitted that without shame. The frame was made from cedar poles cut from the draw, the boards from the line camp, the seams packed with clay, grass, and strips torn from the hem of her old petticoat. The door hung crooked on stolen hinges. But when the north wind struck the bluff that night, the flame in Thomas's lantern held still behind it. That was all the praise she required. The second wall went 8 feet deeper into the hollow. People who had never lived in cold would have called it wasteful. Why build 2 doors when one could close? Why spend strength making an empty pocket between walls? Eliza knew better. Moving air steals. Still air keeps. The space between the 2 walls became part of the shelter, invisible and useful. The first wall took the weather. The second kept the room. Between them, cold got tired. On the 8th evening, she stood inside the back chamber and looked at what her hands had done. The floor was swept flat. The sleeping shelf stood on 6 cedar legs. A shallow smoke channel climbed toward a crack near the entrance, lined with stones she had carried from the seep and heated slowly so they would not split. Thomas's lantern hung from a peg at the back wall. No deed had named this place. No man had signed it over. No paper had made it lawful. But every inch of it had answered to work. And for the first time in months, Eliza felt something under her feet that did not feel borrowed. Mrs. Hartwell? Eliza turned. Nettie Crowell stood below the bluff with a feed sack over one shoulder and one hand braced against the wind. Nettie was 61, narrow as a fence slat and hard to surprise. Her husband had died of a ruptured lung 3 winters earlier, and since then she had kept herself alive by washing, sewing, doctoring colic when men were too proud to admit a horse was dying, and knowing more than anyone in town wanted her to know. She climbed slowly to the hollow mouth and looked inside. For once, Nettie said nothing that told Eliza more than speech would have. At last, Nettie set the feed sack down. "Maribel has been telling Chadron you went wild in the breaks." Eliza picked up a strip of clay and pressed it into a seam. Did she use wild, or did she find a cleaner word? Unsettled, Nettie said, then proud, then dangerous to herself. She is working up to wild. Eliza nodded. Nettie looked at the double wall, the stone-lined fire channel, the raised shelf, the sweep marks on the floor. She is going to have trouble making that version hold. That won't stop her. No. Nettie lowered her voice. There is another thing. Eliza's hand stopped moving. Harlan filed a grazing and stone lease on this bluff section 12 days ago. Says the chalk may be worth burning for lime. The county surveyor is sending Deputy Talbot to inspect before New Year's. For a moment Eliza heard nothing, not the wind, not the small fire, not Nettie breathing beside her. Harlan had taken the house through a paper he did not have the courage to explain. Now another paper had reached the one place she had found without him. Eliza wanted briefly to sit down. Instead, she pressed the clay into the seam until it sealed. How long before Talbot comes? 21 days on the notice, less if weather clears. Nettie held out the feed sack. Inside were beans, cornmeal, a twist of coffee, and 2 candles burned halfway down. Eliza looked at them. That is too much. It is not charity, Nettie said. It is placement. Placement? I am placing supplies where I may need them later. That was the first time Eliza understood that the hollow might become more than an answer to her own winter. She did not say it. Neither did Nettie. They were both old enough to know that naming a thing too early could frighten it off. The notice arrived 4 mornings later, not by Talbot, not even by Harlan. Someone had ridden in before dawn, tied a horse below the bluff, left the paper wedged under a stone, and gone away before the snow stopped falling. The document said that the South Bluff Formation was under preliminary county lease review, filed by Harlan J. Pruitt for lime and grazing use. It said any unauthorized occupant of the surveyed section must vacate within 20 days or face removal under county authority. Eliza read it twice. Then she folded it and placed it behind the glass of Thomas's lantern, between the chimney and the brass frame. Not for safekeeping, for remembering. Every time she lit the lamp after that, the paper glowed. Every threat looked smaller when you could see light through it. The first man to ask shelter came 9 days later. He arrived near noon with a mule, a split lip, and a wagon bed full of lumber tied under oilcloth. His name was Abel Rusk. He had a claim west of the breaks, a dugout that had caved along one wall after rain froze in the roof seam. He had heard from a teamster that a widow had made a warm room in the chalk. He said warm room the way a man says gold. Eliza stood in the entrance with her hand on the doorframe. You rode here for warmth? I rode here because my roof is moving. That is not the same thing. No, Mom. He was 39 or 40, heavy through the shoulders, with the tired eyes of a man who had spent too long arguing with weather and losing by inches. He looked past her into the hollow and went quiet. There it was again. The recalculation. Men had a look when their assumptions failed in public. Some became angry, some became loud, a few became useful. Eliza waited to see which kind Abel Rusk would be. He took off his hat. I can pay in boards, he said, and labor. Show me your pockets. His eyes narrowed. Pardon? You came to a woman living alone under a bluff. Show me what papers you brought before you ask what space I have. For 1 second he looked offended. Then he looked as if he understood that offense had no practical value here. He reached inside his coat and brought out a folded lease receipt. Eliza opened it. The lime lease had been transferred from Harlan Pruitt to Abel Rusk through a land agent in Chadron. The transfer was dated 11 days before. Eliza held the paper until its edges trembled slightly in the wind. Abel watched her face. I bought it because the agent said lime pits might pay better than grass, he said. I did not know anyone was living here. My brother filed it. Abel looked toward the open land, as if the right answer might be approaching on horseback. None came. What do you want done with it? He asked. That question saved him. Not because it solved anything, because it admitted that the paper was not the only thing in the room with authority. Eliza gave him terms. He would keep the lease in his name. He would file no improvement claim, no survey report, and no eviction request. If Deputy Talbot came, Abel would stand present as the legal holder and say the matter was under dispute. In exchange, he could bring his lumber inside, sleep near the first wall, and learn enough from her construction to keep his own dugout from killing him before March. Abel considered this. Then he nodded. Fair, I know. He carried 9 loads of lumber up the slope that afternoon. Eliza did not help. She used the time to rebuild the inner doorframe because she had been waiting for good boards, and now good boards had arrived attached to a man who needed instructions. By nightfall, The hollow smelled of pine instead of only clay and smoke. That was how the warm room began to grow. Not by kindness, not exactly, by exchange, by danger, by the fact that winter lowers people to the truth faster than conversation can. Abel was not easy to work with at first. Men who live alone learn habits and call them principles. On the second day, he moved the woodpile to the left wall because it looked neater there. Eliza returned from the seep, saw what he had done, and moved it back without a word. That evening he sat by the fire longer than usual. The next morning he said, "You had a reason. For the wood?" "Yes, the left wall sweats during thaw. The right wall stays dry." He nodded once. "I should have asked." Eliza drove a peg into the frame. "Yes. There are apologies that ask to be comforted, and apologies that repair a working arrangement. Abel's belonged to the second kind. After that, she began trusting him with heavier tasks. Nettie returned with news twice before Christmas. Maribel had improved her story. Eliza was no longer merely unsettled. She was refusing lawful shelter. She had drawn a strange man into the bluff. She was gathering supplies for reasons that sounded worse. Each time they were repeated by someone who had never carried water uphill in sleet. But the talk did not travel cleanly. Women in town had begun asking why Maribel knew so much about Eliza's condition and so little about the paper that caused it. Men who had ridden the breaks were asking whether the hollow was truly warmer than a dugout. A merchant named Silas Venn had lost his rented room and was asking careful questions about the place under the bluff, and Deputy Quince Talbot had moved the inspection forward. 10 days, Nettie said. Eliza had planned on 18. 10 changed the order of work. It did not change the work. She added a third layer of hides and canvas over the outer door. She widened the sleeping shelf. She built a second rack for food above the damp line. Abel cut drainage grooves across the front slope with a broken hoe blade. Nettie came twice and sewed the canvas seams with wax thread while complaining that men built doors as if wind were polite enough to knock. On the 4th night after the new deadline, Eliza went to check her snares. She had made them from wire pulled out of an old fence line. Simple loops, low to the ground, set where rabbit tracks crossed the brush near the seep. She had not trapped since Thomas died. Thomas had gone out one bitter morning to bring in 2 snares and never returned. The horse came back without him at dusk, reins frozen to the saddle ring. They found Thomas at the bottom of a wash, his leg broken under him, his coat half open where fever had made him hot before the cold finished its work. Since then, wire loops had seemed like a door she could not make herself open. But hunger is a blunt teacher. One snare held a jackrabbit. It was already dead. Eliza crouched in the snow and looked at it. Then the whole morning folded, not dramatically, not with sound. Her knees simply stopped holding her, and she sat down beside the track with the cold pushing through her skirt. She cried for Thomas in a way she had not cried when everyone was watching. Quietly, angrily, with both hands in the snow. Then she wiped her face, lifted the rabbit, reset the snare, and walked back to the hollow because grief did not skin supper, and no one else was coming to do it. She did not tell Abel what the snare had cost. He did not ask. That was another useful thing about him. The storm that proved the warm room began as a color, not cloud, color. The western sky went the yellow-gray of old tallow, and the air became too still, as if the land were holding its breath before taking a blow. Deputy Talbot arrived an hour before dark. He rode alone, which Eliza respected, and slowly, which she respected more. A foolish man would have pushed a horse hard under that sky. Talbot was 50, square in the body, clean-shaven except for a gray strip at the chin. He wore a county coat with brass buttons, and the expression of a man who trusted forms because forms had usually answered him. He climbed the slope and stopped at the entrance. Eliza stood with the lease notice in one hand. Abel stood behind her left shoulder. Nettie sat on the bench inside, knitting as if county authority were just another draft under the door. "This section is under preliminary lease review," Talbot said. "County authority allows removal of unauthorized occupants from active survey ground." "County authority allows notice," Eliza said, "not forced removal from disputed federal land without a federal order." Talbot's eyes changed. "Not much. Enough." "Who told you that?" "My husband spent 2 years fighting a fence line with men who threatened more than they could carry." Abel stepped forward and handed him the transferred lease. "I hold the lease now," Abel said, "and I am disputing the original filing until the land office reviews conflict of interest." Talbot looked from Abel to Eliza, then into the hollow, the double walls, the dry floor, the racks, the firestones, the lantern with the notice glowing behind its glass. He had come expecting a woman to remove. He found a place that had already become an argument. Talbot did not apologize. Men like him rarely started there. He folded the lease and handed it back. "I will review the file." The wind shifted. All 4 of them looked toward the west. Talbot saw the sky and understood it. "I may not reach town before this comes down." Eliza opened the inner door wider. "Then you had better come in." By midnight, the storm owned everything outside the bluff. Snow drove sideways so hard it sounded like sand thrown against canvas. The outer door bowed inward with each gust, then eased back. The air pocket between the 2 walls took the violence and slowed it. Inside, the fire burned low and the stones around it gave off the deep, patient heat Eliza had been building into them for weeks. Talbot sat near the entrance with his coat still on and said almost nothing. Abel slept in pieces. Nettie mended a glove until the light grew too dim, then put it away and listened. Eliza counted wood, then food, then space. The first knock came before dawn, 3 hard strikes on the outer door. Then 1 more, weaker. Abel was up fast, Eliza faster. A freighter named John Mace stumbled in with ice on his lashes and hands so stiff he could not unclench them. His wagon had overturned in a draw. He had followed the bluff by touch for half a mile. Eliza worked his hands back with water warmed slowly beside the coals. "Not hot," she told Abel when he reached for the kettle. "Slow first. Heat can harm what cold has already taken." Talbot watched that. A lawman notices procedures. Even when he does not know, he is learning from them. By noon, there were 9 people inside the warm room. By dark, there were 17. The Larkins came with 2 children wrapped in quilts. A Norwegian bachelor named Iver Dahl came in silent and blue around the mouth. Silas Venn, the merchant, arrived with a frost-rimmed beard and an expression that made it clear Nettie had described the hollow, and he had not believed half of it. He believed it now. Eliza gave him ration duty. He opened his mouth to object, looked around the chamber and closed it. Then he divided cornmeal and beans into portions so smoothly that no one felt the counting until after they were eating. That was competence, too. Not the kind Eliza had expected from him, but winter was useful for that. It revealed what people could do when performance became too expensive. The warm room held, not comfortably. Comfort was not the promise. It held with bodies close, boots steaming near the door, children asleep in the safest corner, the fire taking less wood than anyone outside would have believed, and the bluff giving back its slow-stored heat through the chalk wall. At 2 in the morning on the second night, the canvas moved, not from wind, from hands. Eliza opened the inner door and saw 3 figures in the white dark. 2 adults, one bent nearly double between them. She and Abel went out tied together with a rope around their waists, leaning into cold so hard it felt solid. They brought them in one at a time. The last man raised his head under a crust of snow. Harlan. For one breath, Eliza's body forgot what to do. Then it remembered the room. She got him inside. The woman with him was Mrs. Vale from the next claim, half-conscious and shaking. The bent figure was not a child but Maribel, wrapped in a coat too thin for that wind, her face white with cold and rage and fear and something lower than both. Harlan held Thomas's lantern hook in one hand. Not the lantern, the iron hook Thomas had forged to hang it from the sod house ceiling. Eliza stared at it. Harlan saw her looking. "The roof went," he said. His voice had almost no sound left in it. "The wind took the kitchen side first. Stove pipe tore loose. Fire caught the thatch. We got out." "Everything?" He nodded. "Everything but this." It was above the table. Maribel sat near the wall, wrapped in Nettie's blanket, and did not speak. Harlan held out the hook. Eliza took it. It was blackened along one curve and still smelled faintly of smoke. For weeks she had thought the house was the thing he had taken from her. Now the house was gone, and here was the little iron curve Thomas had made with his own hands, saved by the brother who had failed her in nearly every way that mattered, and had still carried this through a blizzard because some better part of him had not died. Eliza sat down beside Harlan, not across from him, beside him. The storm pressed at the doors. The bluff held. "I knew about the note," Harlan said. "I know. I told myself I was protecting the family. You were protecting quiet." He shut his eyes. Yes, that was the first true thing he had given her. After a while he said, "I am sorry." Eliza looked at Thomas's iron hook in her palm. Sorry did not rebuild a house. It did not return 2 months of labor. It did not make Maribel kind or Harlan brave. But inside that room, with 17 other people breathing because a woman with no deed had understood stone, Eliza could tell the difference between an apology offered to escape and one offered because there was nowhere left to hide. "I hear you," she said. It was not forgiveness. It was a door left unbarred. Talbot came to her near dawn, when the wind began to loosen. "I read the lease again," he said. His voice was low. "The original filing has problems." Eliza looked at him. "Problems it did not have yesterday? Problems I did not choose to see yesterday." That was almost an apology. From Talbot, it may have been the same thing. "I am suspending removal pending land office review," he said. "No one will force you out of this bluff under my authority." Behind him, Maribel looked at the walls, the shelves, the sleeping children, the firestones, the room she had called madness, holding half the country alive. Her face had changed in a way Eliza did not enjoy seeing, not because it was ugly, because it was human. "I thought," Maribel said, then stopped. She began again. "I wanted to believe you were failing." "Why?" Maribel's mouth tightened. "Because if you were failing, then what we did had a shape I could live with." Eliza waited. Maribel looked toward Harlan. "He mourned Thomas every time he looked at you. I did not know what to do with a grief I could not manage, so I managed you instead. No one moved. No one rushed to soften it." Outside, the storm spent the last of itself against the bluff and found no purchase. Eliza said, "There is coffee on the shelf if your hands are steady enough to pour." Maribel stared at her. Then, with fingers still stiff from cold, she stood and reached for the pot. The storm broke on the third morning. Silence woke everyone before light did. The kind of silence that feels suspicious after a night when the world has been trying to enter. One by one, people stepped outside. The basin below lay white and remade. Wagon tracks were gone. Fence lines showed only where the posts rose black from the drifts. The sky was clear enough to hurt. They left through the morning, not with speeches. Survival does not always produce speeches. Sometimes it produces nods, returned gloves, a sack of flour left without explanation, a man touching the door frame as he passes because he does not know how else to thank a wall. Silas Venn was among the last. He set a small cloth purse on the shelf beneath Thomas's lantern. "For the room," he said. Eliza did not reach for it. "It is not an inn." "No," he said. "That is why I am paying." Talbot left with a written note in his coat, signed by Abel as leaseholder and witnessed by Nettie and Silas, requesting formal review of the original filing. Nettie had already written a better one. She admitted this only after Talbot rode away. "I sent it 4 days ago," she said, drinking the last of the coffee as if she had merely remembered to post a recipe. "To the land office in Valentine. I described the note, the relation, the transfer, and the shelter use. Deputy Talbot can add his dignity to the pile." Eliza looked at her. Nettie held up one finger. Do not thank me until it works. 3 weeks later, it worked. A letter arrived in a county envelope stating that the Lime lease was suspended pending review of irregular filing conditions, related party conflict, and established shelter use on disputed ground. No removal order would issue until the review was complete. Nettie read it once. Eliza read it twice. Abel read it slowly, moving his lips at the legal words. Then Eliza placed the letter beside the notice behind the lantern glass. Threat on one side, answer on the other. The light went through both. By February, the warm room had a name. Not one Eliza chose. People began calling it the Bluff Room, a place between Chadron and the Western Claims where a person could warm hands, leave a sack of beans, borrow a dry pair of socks, wait out a squall, or sleep without being asked to explain how badly the winter had gone. Abel did not leave when his dugout was repaired. He built a lean-to against the south face of the bluff, using the chalk wall as its back and Eliza's double-door method at the entrance. He never asked whether staying was permitted. Eliza never granted permission. The work simply continued in a shape that made the question less important each day. Harlan came in March with a wagon of lumber. Good lumber. Too good for apology and not good enough for repayment, which meant it belonged to the only category left: repair. He unloaded it where Eliza pointed. Maribel came with him. She brought seed potatoes in a flour sack and a cast-iron skillet that had survived the fire with one cracked handle. She did not ask to come inside. Eliza opened the door anyway. Harlan stood under the bluff after the wagon was empty and looked toward the room. I withdrew the lease, he said. I know. Nettie told you? Eliza told herself it would happen when you were ready to stop needing paper between us. He looked at his boots. Then, for the first time in many months, he almost smiled. That sounds like something Thomas would have said if he wanted me to feel foolish. He was good at that. Yes, Harlan said, he was. They stood there with the March wind moving weakly across the slope, no longer sharp enough to own the day. When Harlan left, he looked back once from the wagon. Eliza did not wave, but she stayed in the doorway until the wagon dropped below the rise. In April, the first child came alone. He was about 10, with boots resoled in harness leather and a coat that had belonged to someone larger who had either grown or died. He climbed the slope slowly in the pale morning light, carrying nothing but a cloth bundle tied with twine. Eliza saw him from the entrance. Abel was behind the lean-to shaping a door plank. Nettie would not arrive until Thursday. The fire was already awake. Thomas's lantern hung on its peg with 2 papers behind the glass and the iron hook above it, blackened curve catching light. The boy stopped at the last rise. Is this the Bluff Room? Yes. Do you live here? Yes. He looked past her into the chamber. Alone, Eliza considered that. The room held shelves people had filled, walls Abel had strengthened, a letter Nettie had written, lumber Harlan had brought, a skillet Maribel had surrendered, a purse Silas had left, children's boot marks near the safe corner, smoke in the stones, and Thomas's lantern burning with the old steady patience of repaired things. No, she said. The boy nodded as if that answer made sense before he knew why. Eliza stepped back. Come in. He entered, and the morning air came with him. Outside, the April thaw had begun its slow argument with winter. Snow pulled away from the high grass in ragged seams. Water moved under ice. Meadowlarks had returned to the lower flats and were singing like the world had not nearly frozen itself shut. Eliza added a stick to the fire. The boy sat on the bench and held his hands toward the warmth. For a while, neither of them spoke. That was all right. Some places are not made to impress anyone. Some places are made because the wind is real, and paper is not enough, and the living need a door that opens before they can explain themselves. The bluff kept the heat. Eliza kept the door open.